The planet Umbra spun slowly around its dim star, forever cloaked in twilight. On its surface, the shadlings lived their lives in the comfort of eternal dusk. These tall, slender beings with large, sensitive eyes had never known the warmth of direct sunlight. Kira, a young shadowling scientist, peered out from her lab's thick-walled observatory. The faint glow of their sun, barely brighter than a star, was setting. Soon, it would be time for the bustling night markets to open. Another cycle, another disappointment, Kira sighed. She had hoped to find a way to strengthen her people's eyes, to let them see more than just shadows. But every experiment ended the same, with pain and fear of the light. Outside, the city of Penumbra came to life. Bioluminescent plants lit up the streets with a soft blue glow. Shadlings emerged from their homes, their pale skin reflecting the gentle light. They moved gracefully, their long limbs allowing them to glide rather than walk. Zor, Kira's older brother, knocked on the lab door. "Come on, little sister. You can't stay cooped up in here forever." Kira reluctantly left her work. As they walked through the city, she marveled at how her people had adapted. Buildings were shaped like giant mushrooms, providing shade even in the dim daylight. Clothes were designed with hoods and veils to protect sensitive eyes. At the market, vendors sold light-absorbing fabrics and sweet treats made from cave-grown fungi. Children played shadow puppets on the walls, their laughter echoing through the streets. But Kira couldn't shake her sadness. "Don't you ever wonder what we're missing, Zor?" she asked. "There's a whole universe out there, full of light and wonders we can't even imagine." Zor patted her shoulder. "This is our world, Kira. It's beautiful in its own way." Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the city center. People were pointing at the sky, their voices a mix of fear and excitement. Kira and Zor rushed to see what was happening. A bright object was falling from the heavens, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. The shadlings had never seen anything like it. Some ran for cover, while others stood transfixed. The object slowed as it neared the ground, landing softly in the city's main square. It was sleek and metallic, unlike anything on Umbra. As the dust settled, a hatch on its side began to open. Kira pushed her way to the front of the crowd, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Zor tried to pull her back, but she shrugged him off. From the strange vessel emerged beings unlike any the shadlings had ever seen. They were shorter and stockier, with small eyes and skin in various shades of brown. Most shockingly, they wore no protective gear against the dim light. The newcomers looked around in wonder, their eyes adjusting to the darkness. One of them, a female with curly hair, stepped forward and spoke in a language no one understood. She held up her empty hands, showing she meant no harm. Kira's heart raced. These beings, whoever they were, came from a world of light. They might hold the key to everything she had been searching for. The leader of Penumbra, Elder Nyx, approached cautiously. He raised his hand in a traditional shadowling greeting. The curly-haired being mimicked the gesture, a smile spreading across her face. In that moment, as two species from vastly different worlds made first contact, Kira knew everything was about to change. The fear of light that had defined her people for so long was about to be challenged. Little did the shadlings know, these strange visitors called themselves humans, and they were about to introduce Umbra to the wonders of sunlight. The days following the humans' arrival were filled with excitement and fear. The shadlings watched in awe as the visitors moved about in the dim light without any discomfort. Elder Nyx had set up a special meeting area where both species could interact safely. Kira spent every moment she could near the human camp. She watched as they set up strange devices that glowed with artificial light. The humans seemed to need this light to see clearly in the perpetual twilight of Umbra. One day, the curly-haired human leader approached Kira. She pointed to herself and said, "Sarah." Then she gestured to Kira, tilting her head in question. "Kira," the young shadowling replied, mimicking the gesture. It was a small step, but it marked the beginning of communication between their peoples. Over the next few cycles, both sides worked hard to understand each other. The humans brought out devices that could learn and translate languages. Slowly, words began to have meaning. Zor watched all this with worry. "Kira, you're getting too close to them," he warned. "We don't know what they want." But Kira couldn't stay away. She learned that the humans came from a planet called Earth, a world bathed in sunlight. They spoke of colors Kira had never seen, of warmth on their skin, and of plants that reached towards the sky. As understanding grew, so did the concerns of many shadlings. Some feared the humans would bring their harsh light to Umbra. Others worried about diseases from another world. Whispers of sending the humans away began to spread. Elder Nyx called for a city-wide meeting. The great underground hall was packed with shadlings, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. The human delegation, led by Sarah, stood at the front. "People of Penumbra," Elder Nyx began, his voice echoing in the cavern. "We face a moment unlike any in our history. These visitors from the stars offer us knowledge beyond our dreams, but they also bring change, which we have always feared." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kira held her breath, hoping for acceptance. Sarah stepped forward. With the help of the translation device, she addressed the shadlings. "We come in peace and friendship," she said. "We have traveled far to meet new life, to share knowledge and culture. We understand your fear of light, but we believe we can help." A shocked silence fell over the hall. Help? How could these light dwellers help beings who shunned the very thing they embraced? Sarah continued, "Our scientists have studied your biology. We believe your sensitivity to light is not natural, but the result of a long-ago change in your world. With your permission, we want to help your eyes and skin adapt to the brighter light." The hall erupted in chaos. Some shadlings shouted in anger, others in hope. Kira's heart raced with excitement. This was everything she had ever dreamed of. Elder Nyx raised his hands for silence. "This is a serious matter that affects all of us. We will need time to discuss and decide." As the meeting ended, Kira rushed Sarah. "I want to help," she said in broken human language. "I believe you." Sarah smiled, her small eyes crinkling at the corners. "We would be honored to work with you, Kira." But not everyone shared Kira's enthusiasm. As they left the hall, a group of angry shadlings blocked their path. Zor was among them. "You want to change us," one shouted. "We won't let you destroy our way of life." Tension filled the air. The humans and shadlings stood face to face, two worlds colliding. The path ahead would not be easy, but the first steps towards a brighter future had been taken. As night fell on Umbra, both species wondered what the coming days would bring. Change was coming to the world of eternal twilight, whether they were ready or not. As debates raged across Penumbra, Kira and Sarah worked tirelessly in the humans' temporary lab. The shadling scientists marveled at the advanced equipment the humans had brought. Screens glowed with data about shadling biology, filling the dim room with an eerie light. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a complex diagram. "Your ancestors once lived in brighter conditions. Over time, your planet's star dimmed, forcing your species to adapt." Kira leaned in, her large eyes widening. "So we weren't always like this." Sarah shook her head. "No. Your bodies still have the potential to handle more light. We just need to reawaken that ability." Outside the lab, tension in the city grew. Some shadlings, excited by the possibilities, gathered to learn more about the humans and their world. Others protested, fearing the changes the outsiders might bring. Zor found himself caught in the middle. He worried for his sister but couldn't deny his own curiosity. One evening, he approached the lab cautiously. "Kira," he called out, "can we talk?" Kira emerged, her eyes bright with excitement. "Zor, come see what we've discovered." Inside, Sarah greeted Zor warmly. She showed him images of Earth, vast oceans, green forests, and blue skies. Zor had never seen such colors before. "This could be Umbra's future," Sarah explained. "Not exactly the same, but brighter, more vibrant. Zor felt a mix of awe and fear. But what if it hurts us? What if we lose who we are? Kira took her brother's hand. We won't. We'll still be us. Just more. Imagine being able to see all this with our own eyes, Zor. As the siblings talked, alarms suddenly blared throughout the human camp. Sarah rushed to a communication device. The protesters, she said urgently. They're trying to sabotage our main ship. The three raced out of the lab. A large crowd had gathered near the humans' landed ship. Angry voices filled the air as some shadlings tried to break into the vessel. Elder Nix arrived, his voice booming over the chaos. Stop this at once. This is not our way. But the crowd was too agitated to listen. Suddenly, a bright light flashed from the ship, a security measure activated by the attack. The shadlings nearest to it cried out in pain, their sensitive eyes overwhelmed. Without thinking, Kira ran towards the injured shadlings. She had been working with brighter lights in the lab and found she could tolerate more than before. She helped the hurt ones move away from the light, shielding them with her body. Zor watched in amazement as his sister moved through the bright area without flinching. The crowd fell silent, stunned by what they were seeing. Sarah quickly shut off the security light. As darkness fell again, Kira stood tall, facing her people. Look at me, she said. I'm one of you, but I can withstand the light now. We don't have to fear it anymore. Elder Nix approached Kira, his expression a mix of concern and wonder. How is this possible? Sarah stepped forward, addressing the crowd. We've been working on a treatment to help your eyes and skin adapt. Kira volunteered to be the first to try it. What you just saw is proof that it works. A murmur ran through the gathered shadlings. Some looked hopeful, others uncertain. Zor moved to stand beside his sister. If Kira can do it, maybe we all can. Maybe it's time we stepped out of the shadows. Elder Nix nodded slowly. Perhaps it is. But such a change must be a choice, not a demand. We will offer this treatment to any who wish to try it. As the crowd dispersed, talking excitedly about what they had witnessed, Kira looked up at the dim sky. For the first time in her life, she didn't fear the thought of it getting brighter. Instead, she felt a thrill of anticipation. The light was coming to Umbra, and with it, a new dawn for the shadlings. The news of Kira's transformation spread quickly through Penumbra. Many shadlings were curious, while others remained skeptical. The human camp became a hub of activity as volunteers came forward to try the treatment. Kira worked alongside Sarah, explaining the process to her fellow shadlings. It's not painful, she assured them. You'll feel a warm tingling as your eyes and skin adapt. Zor, inspired by his sister's bravery, decided to undergo the treatment too. As he sat in the lab, Sarah administered a glowing blue liquid. You might feel dizzy at first, Sarah warned, but it will pass quickly. Zor nodded, closing his eyes as the warmth spread through his body. When he opened them again, the world seemed different, brighter, clearer. How do you feel? Kira asked anxiously. Zor blinked, looking around in wonder. I can see. So much more, he whispered. As more shadlings underwent the treatment, Elder Nix called for a gradual increase in the city's lighting. Bioluminescent plants were bred to glow brighter, and some areas were designated as bright zones for those who had adapted. But not everyone embraced the change. A group led by Vex, an outspoken critic of the humans, continued to protest. They called themselves the Shadow Keepers. We're losing our identity, Vex shouted at a public gathering. These outsiders are destroying our way of life. The city found itself divided. Families argued. Friends disagreed. Some shadlings who took the treatment were shunned by those who refused it. Kira, troubled by the growing rift, approached Elder Nix. We need to show them that we're still us, she said, that the light doesn't change who we are inside. Elder Nix nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps a celebration, he mused. A festival that honors our past while embracing our future. And so, the Festival of Light and Shadow was born. The city was divided into zones of varying brightness. Those who had taken the treatment could explore the brighter areas, while those who hadn't could stay in the familiar dimness. The festival was a whirlwind of music, dance, and art. Shadowlings who had adapted created stunning light sculptures, their newfound color vision allowing them to paint with vibrant hues. Those who remained untreated showcased traditional shadow puppetry and night-blooming flowers. In the central square, Kira and Zor set up an educational booth. They explained the treatment process and showed images of how Umbra might look with a brighter sun. "Imagine fields of plants reaching towards the sky," Kira said to a group of wide-eyed children. "Imagine swimming in waters warmed by sunlight." As night fell, or what passed for night on Umbra, Sarah unveiled a special surprise. With permission from Elder Nyx, the humans had set up a protected area where they would demonstrate Earth-like sunlight. "It will only last for a few minutes," Sarah explained to the gathered crowd. "But it will show you what your world could be like." With a flick of a switch, bright light flooded the area. Many shadowlings gasped, shielding their eyes, but those who had undergone the treatment looked on in awe. For the first time, they saw their world truly illuminated. Colors they had never imagined burst into life. Shadows, once their constant companions, shrank away. Vex and his shadow keepers watched from a distance, their expressions a mix of fear and longing. As the light faded, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, slowly, voices rose in excitement and wonder. Elder Nyx stepped forward, his eyes glistening with tears. "My people," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We stand at a crossroads. The path ahead is bright with possibility, but we must walk it together. Let us not forget who we are, but let us also not fear who we might become." As the festival continued into the night, something had shifted in Penumbra. The fear of light was giving way to curiosity, and hope for a brighter future was beginning to dawn. In the weeks following the Festival of Light and Shadow, more and more shadowlings chose to undergo the treatment. The city of Penumbra began to change, with brighter lights appearing in homes and streets. But the transformation wasn't just physical, it was cultural too. Kira noticed these changes as she walked through the market. Vendors now sold colorful fabrics and bright fruits that had been bred to grow in a gradually increasing light. Children played new games that involved catching beams of light with reflective toys. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Sarah said, joining Kira on her walk. "Your people are adapting so quickly." Kira nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Yes, but not everyone is happy about it." She pointed to a group of shadow keepers huddled in a dim corner. They wore dark cloaks and looked at the brightly lit stalls with disapproval. Vex, their leader, spotted Kira and Sarah. He approached them, his eyes narrowed. "You're destroying everything that makes us unique," he hissed. "Soon, we'll be just like you humans." Sarah tried to reason with him. "The treatment doesn't change who you are inside. It just gives you more options, more freedom." But Vex wouldn't listen. He turned and stalked away, his followers close behind. Kira sighed. "I wish they could see that we're not losing ourselves. We're growing." Later that day, Kira and Zor visited the humans' main ship. The scientists there were working on a much bigger project, a plan to gradually increase the brightness of Umbra's sun. "It's a delicate process," one human scientist explained. "We'll use advanced technology to stimulate your star, making it produce more energy over time." Zor looked worried. "Is it safe? What if something goes wrong?" The scientist assured them that they had done this before on other planets. "We'll increase the brightness very slowly, over many years. Your people and your ecosystem will have time to adapt." As they left the ship, Kira and Zor saw a crowd gathering near the city center. Elder Nyx was making an announcement. "My fellow shadowlings," he began, his voice echoing across the square. "Our friends from Earth have offered us a great gift. They propose to brighten our sun, to bring true daylight to Umbra for the first time in countless generations." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some cheered, while others looked scared. Elder Nyx continued, "This change will happen slowly, giving us all time to adjust. But it is a decision that affects everyone. Therefore, we will hold a vote. All adult shadelings will have a say in our future. The announcement caused a stir throughout Penumbra. Debates sprung up everywhere, in homes, in workplaces, and in the streets. Kira and Sarah worked tirelessly to educate people about the benefits and challenges of a brighter world. They showed simulations of how Umbra might look with a brighter sun, and explained how it could improve food production and energy generation. Zor, who had become a bridge between the treated and untreated shadowlings, organized discussion groups where people could share their hopes and fears. But the Shadowkeepers weren't idle. Vex and his followers spread stories of the dangers of light, warning that it would blind them all and destroy their way of life. As the day of the vote approached, tension in the city grew. Families were divided, with some members embracing the change and others resisting it. The night before the vote, Kira couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, looking out at the dimly lit city she had always known. Change was coming, one way or another. But would it unite her people or tear them apart? In the distance, she could see the soft glow of the human ship. Tomorrow, the shadelings would decide their fate. Would they choose to step into the light or remain in the familiar shadows? As Umbra's weak sun began to rise, casting its faint light over the city, Kira knew that by the next dawn, nothing would be the same. The day of the vote arrived, and Penumbra buzzed with nervous energy. Shadowlings of all ages gathered at voting stations across the city. Some wore the bright clothes of those who had embraced the change, while others clung to the dark robes of tradition. Kira and Zor arrived at the central voting hall early. They saw Sarah and the other humans watching from a distance, respecting that this was a decision for the shadowlings alone. "I hope we've done enough," Kira whispered to her brother. Zor squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens, we've already changed. There's no going back now." Inside the hall, Elder Nyx oversaw the voting process. Each shadowling approached a glowing orb. A touch to the left meant yes to brightening their sun, while a touch to the right meant no. As the day wore on, both sides watched anxiously. Vex and his Shadowkeepers huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Kira noticed some shadowlings leaving the voting hall with tears in their eyes. This decision weighed heavily on everyone. By nightfall, all votes were cast. The city held its breath as Elder Nyx prepared to announce the results. "My fellow shadowlings," he began, his voice echoing through speakers across Penumbra. "Today we have made a historic decision. The vote to brighten our sun has passed, with 58% in favor." A roar went up from the crowd, cheers mixed with cries of dismay. Kira felt a rush of excitement, but it was tempered by concern for those who had voted against the change. Vex pushed his way to the front. "This is a mistake," he shouted. "You're dooming us all." Elder Nyx raised his hands for silence. "I understand this decision is difficult for many. That is why we will proceed slowly and carefully. No one will be forced to change faster than they are comfortable with." In the days that followed, the humans began their work to gradually increase the sun's brightness. Special shields were put in place to protect those who hadn't taken the treatment. Kira threw herself into helping her people adapt. She organized classes to teach shadowlings about their new world. They learned about colors, about new plants that could grow in brighter light, and about the joy of feeling warm sunlight on their skin. Zor focused on helping those who were struggling with the change. He set up support groups where shadowlings could talk about their fears and challenges. But not everyone was willing to adapt. Vex and a group of Shadowkeepers announced they were leaving Penumbra. They would journey to the dark side of Umbra, where the light would never reach them. "This is no longer our world," Vex declared as they prepared to leave. "We will keep our ways alive in the darkness." Kira felt sad watching them go, but she understood their choice. Change wasn't easy for everyone. As the weeks passed, Umbra's sun grew gradually brighter. The first time true daylight touched the planet's surface, shadowlings gathered in the streets in awe. They saw their world clearly for the first time, bathed in golden light. New plants began to sprout, reaching for the strengthening sun. The air felt warmer, filled with new scents. Shadowlings who had taken the treatment found themselves spending more time outside, marveling at the changing landscape. One bright morning, Sarah found Kira sitting on a hillside overlooking the city. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked, joining her. Kira smiled, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. "It's beautiful. Scary sometimes, but beautiful. We're learning so much, growing in ways we never imagined." Sarah nodded. "Change is never easy, but your people are incredible. You've embraced a new way of life while still holding on to who you are." As they sat together, watching penumbra shine in the sunlight, Kira felt a deep sense of hope. The road ahead would have challenges, but the Shadlings had taken their first steps into a brighter future. Together, they would learn to walk in the light. 5 years had passed since the Shadlings voted to brighten their world. Penumbra had transformed into a city of light and shadow, a place where the old and new coexisted in harmony. Kira stood on the balcony of the newly built Sun Tower, looking out over her changed home. The once dim streets now bustled with activity under the warm glow of Umbra's strengthened sun. Gardens full of colorful flowers dotted the city, their petals reaching towards the sky. Zord joined her, carrying his young daughter. The child's eyes, large like all Shadlings, sparkled with a curiosity for the bright world around her. "It's amazing how far we've come," Zor said, bouncing his daughter gently. Kira nodded, smiling at her niece. "And to think, she'll never know a world without sunlight." Below them, the city prepared for the annual Light Festival. This celebration had replaced the old Festival of Light and Shadow, honoring both their past and their future. Shadlings hung glowing lanterns and set up stalls selling sun-ripened fruits and shimmering fabrics. Sarah and a group of humans arrived, their ship landing in the designated area. Over the years, more humans had come to visit Umbra, fascinated by the Shadlings' journey. Some had even chosen to stay, learning from and contributing to Shadling society. "Welcome back," Kira greeted them warmly. "You're just in time for the festival." As night fell, the city came alive with light and music. Shadlings danced in the streets, their movements a blend of traditional shadow dances and new styles inspired by the rhythms of daylight. Elder Nix, now retired but still respected, gave a speech in the central square. "Look how far we've come," he said, his voice filled with pride. "We faced our fears, embraced change, and found strength we never knew we had." The crowd cheered, but Kira noticed a group standing apart. They wore the dark robes of the Shadow Keepers, their eyes squinting in the bright festival lights. Vex was among them. Kira approached cautiously. "Vex, I didn't expect to see you here." The old Shadow Keeper's face was lined with age and worry. We've come to see what's become of our home," he said quietly. Kira felt a surge of compassion. "Would you like a tour? There's still plenty of shadow here, along with the light." To her surprise, Vex nodded. As they walked through the festival, Kira showed him how Penumbra had changed. She pointed out the shadow gardens where traditional night-blooming plants still thrived, and the new schools where young Shadlings learned about both their shadowed past and bright future. Vex listened silently, his expression unreadable. But as they passed a group of children playing with prisms, creating rainbows on the walls, Kira saw a flicker of wonder in his eyes. "It's not what I feared," Vex admitted finally. "You've kept our essence, even in the light." Kira smiled. "We are still Shadlings. The light didn't change that. It just showed us new possibilities." As the festival reached its peak, everyone gathered for the ceremony of cycles. Slowly, the city lights dimmed, plunging Penumbra into familiar darkness. Then, gradually, lights began to glow. First, the bioluminescent plants, then lanterns, and finally the warm, sun-like lamps that lit the streets. It was a reminder of their journey, from deepest shadow to brightest light. Sarah found Kira in the crowd. "Your people have done something incredible," she said. "You've bridged 2 worlds." Kira looked around at her fellow Shadlings, some still more comfortable in shadow, others basking in the glow of lamps, She saw humans mingling with them, sharing stories and laughter. "No," Kira replied, her heart full. "We've created a new world, one of balance and understanding, and it's beautiful." As the first rays of Umbra's brightened sun peeked over the horizon, shadlings and humans alike turned to watch. It was a new dawn, both literally and figuratively. The future stretched out before them, full of light, shadow, and endless possibilities. In that moment, Kira knew that the shadlings had not just learned to sunbathe. They had learned to embrace change, to face their fears, and to find strength in diversity. And that, perhaps, was the greatest lesson of all.